Hello everyone, welcome to another video. Today we are going to have a very special video talking about ancient mysteries. The source of all of our mysteries today is going to be the History magazine, so all credit goes to them. And we are going to start with a mystery about the Library of Alexandria. What really happened to the Library of Alexandria? These are the theories. As flames engulfed the Library of Alexandria, the ancient world's greatest repository of human knowledge vanished. But who lit the match? It's one of history's most, burning questions. And with good reason. The library was one of the history's most important institutions in education and culture. Despite being the pride of the ancient world, the famous Egyptian library burned multiple times and, in 48 BC, found itself in the crosshairs of a civil war. Did Julius Caesar really burn down the great library of Alexandria, or was it Islamic scholars, or the library's patron himself? Here are all the leads historians have about the library's destruction. What was the Library of Alexandria? Despite its location in Egypt, the library was actually a bastion of ancient Greek culture, built inside a temple known as the Museion, or Temple of the Muses. The museum and its reading rooms and gardens no longer exist. But contemporary reports wax poetic over their architecture and contents, all a nod to Greek civilization thanks to the influence of the 3th-century reign of the Ptolemaic dynasty in Egypt. It is unclear if the library was a brainchild of Ptolemy I, Soter, first pharaoh of the Ptolemaic dynasty, who took the throne in 323 BC, or his advisor Demetrius of Phaleron. Ptolemy was Macedonian Greek by birth and turned Egypt into a mecca of Greek culture during his rule. He had big ambitions for the city of Alexandria, which he helped build on Egypt's Mediterranean coast and made capital in 305 BC. Eventually, Ptolemy's great city served as a port of entry in every possible way for literature, art, and philosophy, as well as trade. Around 295 BC, he tasks Demetrius with building the world's greatest collection of written works, a move that would put Alexandria on the map and turned Egypt into an important Greek culture center. However, Ptolemy I did not live to see the library. He died in 283 BC. Historians mostly agree that it opened during the reign of his son and successor Ptolemy II Philadelphus between 284 and 246 BC. By then, the Ptolemaic dynasty had devoted exorbitant resources to the project and to Alexandria's expansion. As the pharaoh's scouts scoured the world for written works, they acquired or copied treasures like the Library of Aristotle and copies of original plays by Aeschylus, Euripides, and Sophocles. Doing my best with the names. Though best known for containing the entirety of ancient Greek literature, the library also contained works from other cultural hubs like Syria, Persia, and India. And it stunned visitor not just with its thousands and thousands of papyrus scrolls, but with its architecture. The library was known worldwide as a repository of knowledge. Like a modern university, it attracted scholars tempted by its large collections and eager to further knowledge of science, mathematics, and the arts. It was so large that it spun off a sister institution, the Serapeum, in another temple nearby. But Ptolemy VIII expelled all foreign scholars as part of the succession struggle around 145 BC. Modern scholars know frustratingly little about the library and its scholars. Nevertheless, it made an outsized impact on its world. Perhaps then its greatest contribution to the history of scholarship is that it existed at all. By many authors, it was called the greatest gift of the Ptolemies to the ancient world. Before we go into all the theories of how the library might have burned, I wanted to say that if I could ever travel in time, one of the places that I would absolutely visit first is the Library of Alexandria. I know that I would have to kind of speak ancient Greek, or I don't know, perhaps be able to translate things from ancient languages, but I don't know, maybe I could take my phone and take lots of photos and then try to translate them once I'm back to present time. But it's also one of those things that I actually pity the most that happened historically. It's a very unfortunate thing that we have lost the knowledge from the library. Either way, let's continue. How the Library of Alexandria burned. Social unrest across Egypt may have fueled the library's fall. In 48 BC, at least part of the library became a casualty of an Egyptian civil war. That year, Roman general Julius Caesar and his men traveled to Alexandria to defend Caesar's ally, Cleopatra, in a war against her brother, Ptolemy XIV. In the process, the Romans attempted to block Ptolemy's fleet from leaving the docks by setting Alexandria's ships and wharves on fire. As the fire spread, they reached the Mosean. Historical sources disagree on how much damage resulted. Some early historians, like Plutarch, claim the entire library burned, while philosopher Seneca the Younger later quoted a now-lost work that says 40,000 scrolls were destroyed. Did anything survive? Later sources refer to the Mosean, indicating that the temple was still in use, and scholars seem to have continued working with collections that would have been burned if the library had been fully destroyed. The fall of Library of Alexandria. The remnants of the library and the academics affiliated with it experienced a slow decline, along with Alexandria itself, other scholars hold. Over time, the Library of Alexandria rather slowly demised due to neglect. Once a seat of great knowledge, Alexandria was now under Roman rule, and Roman leaders seem to have largely ignored the repository. We are told very little about the library, or whatever was left of it, in the Roman imperial period. The Library of Alexandria may have been gone, but there is evidence its sister institution survived, only to burn twice itself. As Christianity spread throughout Rome, Christian rulers like Theodosius I, the Christian patriarch of Alexandria, began to fight what they saw as pagan idolatry. Idolatry? In AD 391, a group of Serapeum scholars, angry at the Roman attack on their gods and muses, attacked some Christians in Alexandria. In response, the Christians vandalized and tore down the Serapeum. Arson, or accusation thereof, continued to play a role in the library's downfall. In 642 AD, Arab forces commanded by Amr ibn al-As captured Alexandria during the devoutly Islamic Rashidun Caliphate's conquest of Egypt. According to a surviving 13th century text, the Arab invaders were commanded by Caliph Umar to destroy the Great Library, supposedly using its books as fuel for fires to warm their bathwater during the occupation that followed. But modern historians say that is a myth likely created and propagated by medieval Christians suspicious of Islam and its teachings. Intellectual tolerance was a hallmark of medieval Islamic civilization, writes historian Asma Afsaruddin. Contrary to popular myth, Muslims of the era were remarkably receptive to the knowledge of other cultures. An enduring debate. For years, debates raged about who destroyed the library and why. This is a murder mystery with a number of suspects, noting that passions still run high on this matter. Some scholars blame the Christian teachers of 391 for laying waste to the remnants of classical learning that remained in the library, while others pinned the great library's ultimate destruction on the Islamic Caliphate and its supposed rejection of non-Muslim knowledge. What we do know is that eventually even references to the museum faded. Today, the Library of Alexandria remains one of history's most mourned wonders and still sparks regret for the irretrievable loss of so much ancient knowledge. So that is our first ancient mystery. To be honest, I think that the library was destroyed little by little by all of these, culprits mentioned. The first fire was perhaps caused by Romans attacking Alexandria, and then, of course, it just went downhill from there, because not only Romans did not care to upkeep the library, but also then we had the whole Christian fiasco happening. And from many other instances, we do have proof that Christians were not very welcoming on upkeeping the old traditions throughout the history. but I already spoke about it a lot in all of my other videos, so I'm not going to bring it anymore here today. So let's go to our next ancient mystery. So our next one is going to be about Ramses II. As you may know or not, he was one of the Egypt's biggest or most important pharaohs. So why don't we read a bit more about him? So who was Ramses II? Ramses II, circa 1303 and 1213 BC, was one of ancient Egypt's greatest rulers. He recognized that diplomacy and an exhaustive public relations campaign could mitigate any military shortcomings. Smart. His celebrated building accomplishments, including the marvels of Karnak and Abu Simbel, reflected his vision of a great nation and of himself as the ruler of rulers. Indeed, Ramses II, sometimes called Pharaoh Ramesses II, erected more monuments and statues and sired more children than any other pharaoh. As a result, he has long been regarded by Egyptians as Ramses the Great, and his 66 years on the throne is considered to be the height of Egypt's power and glory. I think that 66 years on the throne, meaning that even if he started as a pharaoh during his childhood, is a long time to live, during these years. So that should mean something, right? Ramses II's military prowess. It was Ramses II's grandfather, Ramses I, who had elevated their commoner family to the ranks of royalty through his military prowess. Ramses II's father, Seti I, secured the nation's wealth by opening mines and quarries. He also fortified the northern frontier against the Hittite Empire, a tribe out of modern-day Turkey. When 14-year-old Ramses II ascended the throne, so there we go, 14 plus 66, we have 80 years. That's a really good life expectation for, that time. Ascended the throne, the Hittites saw an opportunity to test the young king and his empire's northern border. They invaded and took over the important trading town of Kadesh in modern-day Syria. Ramses II led a military campaign to recapture Kadesh, but he was duped by spies into thinking the Hittites were far from the Egyptian camp. Instead, they were lying in wait nearby and attacked. The Egyptians were on the brink of defeat when reinforcements arrived just in the nick of time. Ramses II won that battle, but he did not win the war. His battered troops withdrew from Kadesh, but Ramses wasn't about to let a little truth tarnish his perceived triumph. On temple walls across Egypt, he ordered the creation of murals depicting him single-handedly defeating the aggressors. In reality, after years of negotiations, Ramses II eventually signed a peace treaty with the Hittites. I've been reading it Hittites, but it's Hittites, or maybe something completely different. But you know what? I'm gonna continue read it like I was, just for consistency. It was the earliest peace accord whose text has survived. Among its articles, both sides agreed to extradite refugees and not exact retribution after their return. Further, they agreed to aid one another if attacked by foreign or domestic enemies. One copy of the treaty in hieroglyphics was carved on a stela at Karnak, his Luxor temple. A second copy, written in Akkadian on a clay tablet, was discovered in Turkey in 1906. The significance of this peace treaty is reflected in the fact that a replica of the tablet is on display at the United Nations headquarters in New York. It's a show that sometimes the best way to go is through negotiations. As a species that is considered to be intelligent, especially in the adulthood, I feel that we could learn a little bit from Ramses. Instead of going to war, we can definitely negotiate and just communicate better. Securing his fame as a sign of diplomatic good faith, Ramses II married the eldest daughter of the Hittite king. She joined him, Nefertari, his chief queen, and his enormous family. He sired more than 1,000 children, and his new capital, Per Ramessu, also Pi Ramesses, aptly though audaciously named after himself. The wealth of Ramses II's reign is evident in his opulent building campaign, the largest undertaken by any pharaoh. The temples in Karnak and Abu Simbel are among Egypt's greatest wonders. His funerary temple, the Ramesseum, in the Valley of the Kings, contained a massive library of some 10,000 papyrus scrolls. He honored both his father and himself by completing temples at Abydos. For all of Ramses II's efforts to ensure his legacy would live on, there was one testament of his power he could not have foreseen. After his death, 9 subsequent pharaohs took his name upon ascending the throne, solidifying his stature as the Great among ancient Egyptian rulers. We know there were many Ramseses after him. Abu Simbel, a monumental temple. Ramses II wanted there to be absolutely no question which pharaoh had built the magnificent temple at Abu Simbel. At its entrance, 4 60-plus foot tall seated statues of him serve as sentries. Dedicated to the sun gods, the temple extends 185 feet into its cliff via a series of 3 towering halls. Scenes depicted Ramses II at the Battle of Kadesh, as well as the pharaoh and his principal wife, Nefertari, making offerings to the sun gods. Ramses ordered a second, smaller temple built nearby for Nefertari. Because of its remote location, Abu Simbel went undiscovered until 1813. in 1959, when the constitution of the Aswan High Dam threatened to flood the site, UNESCO embarked on an unprecedented 20-year rescue effort that relocated both Abu Simbel temples, stone by stone, to higher ground, some 200 feet further up the cliff. Notable children. I mean, we have thousands, so. Among the more than 100 plus offsprings of excuse me, but there was 1,000 in the previous. Never mind. Among the more than 100 plus offspring of Ramses II, Prince Khaem Vasset truly stands apart. He held the prestigious post of High Priest of Ptah, the patron god of Memphis. Bas-reliefs depict him in his important duty of tending to tomb of Ptah's sacred Apis bulls in the underground complex known as Serapeum. Khaem Vasset's larger legacy is his groundbreaking role in one of the first known archaeologists. He was entranced by the 1,000-year-old landmarks from the Old Kingdom that surrounded him in Memphis. He inspected and restored several temples and pyramids. At each restoration, he inscribed the names and titles of the building's original owners, as well as his and his father's names. A millennium after his death, he was revered as a scholar and featured in a series of stories about his accomplishments. Mer-Neptah rose to the throne after Ramses II's death in 1230 BC at nearly 60 years old. While his father earned a reputation for his military prowess, Mer-Neptah is best known for his defense of Egypt from opposing forces. Among his many victories is an attack by Libyans and Sea People in 1209 BC. To commemorate these battles, he commissioned the Mer-Neptah stele. Ramses II also elevated several of his daughters to great royal wife status. Among them, Bintanath was likely his favorite. In addition to being a great royal wife, she was also dubbed as the Lady of the Two Lands and Sovereign of Upper and Lower Egypt. Her likeness is carved on a facade of Abu Simbel, adding to Ramses II legacy. So this story is not a mystery per se, but just shows a little bit of Ramses II accomplishments, and he was added by National Geographic, which is the source of History magazine, as the most influential, one of the most influential figures in history. And I definitely agree. I think that Egypt had a lot of money at the time, a lot of power, a lot of culture, of course, and that's obviously reflected in the things that we have from their legacy until now. And we are going to complete our video of ancient mysteries today with Phoenicians. A few videos ago, it was one of my Portuguese speaking videos. I read about Troy. It is Troy, a real location and a place called Troy, and it was in Portugal, incredibly. but it was one of those cities that Phoenicians used to trade with. But let's read who were the Phoenicians. Archaeologists are unraveling the mystery. Despite being known as masters of trade, these seafarers were never a single collective. Different groups built powerful cities across the Mediterranean, and the latest research shows they date back earlier than we thought. So they knew how to navigate the seas very well and, traveled everywhere through Mediterranean, so very well spread. The Phoenicians never existed, or at least the people we now know as Phoenicians didn't use that name for themselves. While they identified as inhabitants of a particular city, Tyre, Sidon, Gebal, known by the Greeks as Byblos, Berytus, Beirut, and Aradus, Arvat. They never identified themselves as a Phoenician collective. Each Phoenician city was independent. The inhabitants spoke different dialects, and each city had its own pantheon, institutions, and an autonomous international policy. The term Phoenician or Phoinike is a Greek word first used in Homeric poems composed around the 8th to 7th centuries BC. It refers to the people and region along the modern-day Lebanese coast. It's not clear why Phoinike was chosen. Its meaning of a reddish purple may refer to the perceived tan skin tone of the Phoenicians, or more likely the valuable purple dye they used to color their textiles. Very fancy color. The erroneous view of the Phoenicians as a single people also led to the assumption that, at some point in the past, the founders of the Phoenician cities had moved to the coast of present-day Lebanon from somewhere else. Jewish, Greek, and Roman authors formulated various theories regarding the origin of the Phoenicians based on this assumption. One of the most widespread views is found in the biblical book of Genesis, the definitive version of which was probably written in the 6th century BC. There it is stated that the Phoenicians were descendants of Sidon, son of Canaan, and grandson of Ham. Through this association, the biblical writers include the Phoenicians within the genealogy of humanity. Ham, son of Noah, was considered the progenitor of the African people. Ham's brother, Shem, the progenitor of the Semitic people, and the third brother, Japhet, the progenitor of the people of Central and Eastern Asia. Curiously, the biblical writers saw the Phoenicians, who, like them, spoke a Semitic language, as descending from Ham rather than Shem. Greek and Roman authors put forward various hypotheses about the origins of the Phoenicians. According to Herodotus, they came from the Erythraean Sea, located, according to some sources, between the Horn of Africa and the Arabian Peninsula. Strabo and Pliny the Elder pointed to the Persian Gulf region as the Phoenicians' origin homeland. Justine records that the Phoenicians had to migrate toward the Levant because of an earthquake in their country of origin, although he doesn't indicate when or where this earthquake took place. It may have been in Syria or some region in Mesopotamia, or perhaps on the shores of the Red Sea. There's a subsection here. I feel like it's kind of part of the story, but also kind of not. But the title is Richer in Fishes Than in Sand. The papyrus Anastasia I, a satirical text composed in the 13th century BC during the reign of the Egyptian Pharaoh Ramses II, included a brief description of the Egyptian-controlled cities of the Canaan coast. It is structured as a letter written by an Egyptian scribe, although it is more likely to be a literary composition. One section is dedicated to the cities of the people the Greeks later called the Phoenicians. I will tell you of another mysterious city. Byblos is its name. What is it like? And its goddess. Once again, you have not trotted it. Come teach me about Berytus and about Sidon and Sarepta. They tell of another city in the sea. Tyre the port is the name. Water is taken over to it in boats, and it is richer in fishes than in sand. The text offers insight into the Egyptian administrator's knowledge of Canaan. It references its roads, the layouts of its cities, and the wealth of the region a few centuries before Phoenicia would begin its golden era of trans-Mediterranean trading. So Egyptians already know about this fancy land, or fancy lands, Phoenicians. Clues from archaeology. However, the latest historical and archaeological data contradict all of these ancient hypotheses about the origin of the Phoenicians. Biblical and Greco-Roman traditions could only speculate about the Phoenicians, a people whose true history was largely unknown. But archaeological discoveries are uncovering evidence of what really happened. While the ultimate origin of the people who later became the Phoenicians is lost in the midst of time, by the period in which their great cities arose, they were established in the Mediterranean Levant alongside neighboring Canaanites. Recent research shows that the Phoenicians were direct heirs of a culture that had been based in the Levant since at least the 3rd millennium BC, that of the oh my gosh, okay, whatever. Here we go again, okay. The Canaanites are most widely known through the Bible, where they are described as the indigenous people of Palestine, who resisted the Israelite conquest of their territory, traditionally dated around 1200 BC. As the story repeats, however, Canaan's heyday came earlier in the 2nd millennium BC, when Canaan, oh my god, why is it so difficult, brain? Canaanite culture spread throughout the Levant, from present-day Israel to the Palestinian territories to southern Syria. The various Semitic people of the area created a mosaic of city-states in which they spoke different dialects of the same West Semitic language. These city-states maintained trading relations with the other territories of the Eastern Mediterranean. The strategic value of the Canaanite territory and the abundance of particular resources, including cedar wood, meant that the empires of the Near East and Egypt were constantly trying to control the territory. For almost 3 centuries, pharaohs of Egypt's new kingdom ruled Canaan. Canaanite roots. There is a clear continuity between the Canaanite culture of the 3rd and 2nd millennia BC and the Phoenician civilization of the 1st millennium BC. Archaeology has shown that Phoenician cities such as Gebal and Tyre were occupied almost continuously from at least the early Bronze Age, circa 3500 and 2000 BC, by the ancestor of the people later known as the Phoenicians. These cities were located on promontories or islands, allowing them to control the surrounding agricultural land and the natural bays and ports, which were key to their training activities. According to written sources, around 1200 BC, the region experienced a moment of crisis due to invasion by so-called sea people, groups of pirates from the western coast of Anatolia and the Aegean Sea area. While archaeological evidence uncovered so far attests to disruptions in trade, the Phoenicians continued sailing and trading. We have another one of those, kind of chapter within chapter, and it's called Tyre, an age-old city. The Tyre Project, a research program ran by Pompeu Fabra, University of Barcelona, has uncovered new archaeological evidence about the deep history of Tyre. This port city drove Phoenician colonial expansion in the Mediterranean. In the program's first phase, from 1997 to 2010, the research team focused on excavations at the site of Al-Bas, the largest Phoenician necropolis in Lebanon, where around 250 cinerary urns dated between 900 and 600 BC have been recovered. The program's second stage, from 2013 to 2019, focused on exploring the Acropolis area. The monumental remains of a sanctuary dating to 600 BC were among the most striking finds. From there, the team was able to dig down to the earliest strata, which confirmed that Tyre was founded between the end of the 4th millennium and the beginning of the 3rd millennium BC, probably as a port on the ancient network known as the Byblos Run, a route trading oil, wine, and cedar wood among Mesopotamia, Turkey, Crete, Cyprus, and Egypt. So it is indeed a very, very old city. Maybe also a reminder to certain someones trying to conquer that area, that it belongs to someone else. The idea that the Phoenicians were a powerful trading people, far from being a novelty in the first millennium, is already attested to in tablets written around 2300 BC, discovered in the Syrian city of Ebla. These texts show that Gebal was already acting as an intermediary in international trade between the Mediterranean and the cities of kingdoms of Asia, particularly in textiles, metals, and wood. Later, during the Late Bronze Age, Sebal, Sidon, and Tyre, together with Ugarit, were the main commercial ports of the eastern Mediterranean, vital spots on the land and sea routes between Egypt, Mycenae, Syria, Palestine, Cyprus, and Mesopotamia. Evidence indicates that the various dialects used by the Phoenicians belong to the Canaanite dialect group of the northern Semitic languages. The closest language to Phoenician are Hebrew and Aramaic. The Phoenicians can even be credited with playing a major role in the invention of the alphabet, one of the most significant advances in human history. Their alphabet built on and consolidated earlier forms of writing found in the so-called Proto-Canaanite inscriptions from sites including Izbet Sartach and Serabit el-Khadim, as well as the cuneiform alphabet of Ugarit. A distinct culture. Phoenician religion, too, seems to have evolved largely from the ancient Canaanite religion. They continued to worship of traditional Canaanite divinities such as Baal, El, Anat, Astarte, Resheb, Kotar, and Baalat. Baalat Gebal, Lady of Byblos. Later, the Phoenician cities adopted additional deities as a result of their contact with other groups, including Assyrians, Babylonians, Arameans, Hebrews, Philistines, and Greeks. They also started to worship divinities such as Melkart and Tanit, who were not included in the Canaanite pantheon of the second millennium BC. So the Phoenicians developed their own religion, but maintained a strong continuum with the previous Canaanite culture. The gods of Canaan. The extensive pantheon of Phoenician cities included many divinities of Canaanite origin. Notable among them were El, god of creation, Baal, god of fertility, Astarte, also associated with renewal and nature, and Reshef, associated with plague and war. Many of these names are kind of reminding me of something else. El is a name of someone. Sons of El or son of El is the supposed Christian God. You know, the Almighty. He says that he's just the only one, but apparently he's a son of El, which means that, you know, probably there are many others, but okay. Who am I, right? Who am I to judge the quantity of gods? But also Baal. Baal is one of the demons later on. And here we see him as a god. Anyway, thanks in part to the turbulence caused by the sea people, Phoenician cities began to evolve and thrive after 1200s. The Sea People had destroyed rival ports such as Ugarit, which were not rebuilt, allowing the Phoenicians to monopolize trade with Cyprus, Greece, and Egypt. The rise of the Phoenician cities was also made possible by the demise of the Egyptian and Hittite empires. By the 10th century BC, Tyre was the main commercial power in the Levant. Soon after, a colonial expansion began that would take Phoenician culture westward to the other side of the Mediterranean, the Iberian Peninsula, and the Atlantic coast of Africa. As mentioned at the start of the video, that is the part when Phoenicians started trading with people from Portugal, the city of Troy in Portugal. I would recommend maybe if you are able to watch that video while with subtitles translated, but it was very interesting to me because when I found the section of the magazine that was titled Troy, I was like, okay, this is about the Troy that we all know, the one from the mythology or whatever. But while reading it, I started to understand that it's an actual place that exists that was called Troy, and it is in Portugal. It was discovered relatively recently. I believe it was either 18th or 19th century, but either way it was a very important trade point for fish sauce, a special fish sauce that then was sold and delivered to most of the Mediterranean because it used to be like as an example, in Mediterranean region, we now see a lot of countries and people using olive oil, right? So, and that would be a good example for this fish sauce, that people everywhere would be using it. It was part like of the day to day to have that sauce with the food. As one of the reasons they state that this fish sauce would kind of mask the flavor of some ingredients that were not as fresh as one would hope at the time. So that's why it was so popular, because of the flavor. But it was made there in Troy, in Portugal, and then delivered possibly even by Phoenicians that traded the sauce everywhere else in Mediterranean. But that is it for Phoenicians and also for our video. I enjoyed it very much. I feel like even though they were not intentionally connected, all three of chapters that we read were kind of intertwined. Either way, thank you so much for joining me today, and I will see you next time. Bye.